please come to order? I would like to welcome everybody to the 26th day of the session, Wednesday, February 15th, 2023. So today in history, on February 15th, 1812, the Astorians reached the mouth of the Columbia River. They traveled overland with one horse for every 2 men. Their route had taken them through Wyoming and over South Pass. And I thought that was really poignant. And from my area, the Astorians kind of moved up through my area past into the Hoback, and that's kind of the route they took. So I thought that was a good way to start the day. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Convening roll call for the 26th day, Wednesday, February 15th, 2023. Alamand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haraldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Warnock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrop? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez-Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers? Nyman? Nicholas?
I would like to welcome Erica Jensen, Public Relations Specialist here in Cheyenne for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to do our prayer of the day. Please rise.
Our gracious, eternal Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for the opportunity we have to meet together. We're grateful for this wonderful country that we get to live in, Heavenly Father. We're grateful for this beautiful state of Wyoming, where we are blessed with freedom. We are grateful for our elected officials, and please bless them as they serve our great state. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for our military who fight to protect us. As the world is in turmoil and chaos with war and earthquakes, we ask a special blessing on those people who are hurting and suffering. Bless them with peace and comfort at this time. Heavenly Father, we ask a special blessing on our elected officials. Bless them with the things they stand in need of to make these important decisions placed before them. Bless them with patience and kindness as they work with people that might not share their same ideas. Heavenly Father, we also ask a special blessing on their families as they are home. Please protect and keep them safe. In closing, we're so grateful for all that we have, Heavenly Father. We're grateful for our jobs and the opportunity we have to work. We're grateful for our family and loved ones. We're grateful for this great state of Wyoming and this great country that we have to live in. We close this prayer unto thee and say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you for your words, Erica. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
House will please come to order. Journal Committee report. Oh, yeah, let's finish the roll call, please. Let's finish the roll call. If anybody sees Representative Yin again, we need to corral him.
Yin. 62 present.
All right, now, Journal Committee report.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 14th, 2023 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representatives Chestick and Ward.
Privilege of the floor, Representative Conrad,
Mr. Chairman, privilege of the floor.
please.
Thank you. Representative 67th, I want to share with you a dear friend and colleague, and more importantly, a constituent that is single-handedly every day tries to improve Uintah County, both professionally, civically, and more importantly, to the betterment of our great state and county. And that person would be Mark Tesoro. Mark Tesoro, please stand up and acknowledge this body.
Mark, welcome to the House. Privilege of the floor, Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it's not often when we get folks that come down from Casper. Number one on our license plates, number one in your heart. Now, I have a really special constituent today. I just got a text from his mother. We have all these CTE students at the Capitol today, some who have beat the weather here, but I want to introduce you to a special student, a kid that's overcome so much. And you maybe read about these kids who went through this burn accident last year and have fought their way back. And then he comes back to be an all-state football player. He's going to play in the Shrine Bowl, comes back from all that, and he'll be going on to college in South Dakota next year. But I want to introduce you to a constituent student of mine, a great kid from Casper, Wyoming, Mr. Caden Farr. Welcome to the House.
Welcome to the House. Do we have any other privileges of the floor? Not seeing any. Our doctor of the day is John Winter. I don't see him, but let's give John Winter a, is he there? Oh, it's not that John, but maybe it is that John. John Winter, yeah, give him a hand. Yeah. I'm pretty sure Representative Winter knows how to worm a horse, and beyond that, I'm not real sure. Let's see, is our guest? I don't see our guest yet. All right. Messages from no messages from the Senate. All right. Just trying to check. We have a guest here, but I don't see, unless that person's coming. I'm just going to wait just a second because, yep, I think we're good. All right. Just stand at ease for a second till we get this organized. Thank you. This morning, we are joined by Chairman Lloyd Goggles, who was recently elected chairman of the Northern Arapahoe Business Council, Prior to his election, Chairman Goggles served in the United States Marine Corps from 1996 to 1999 and in the Wyoming National Guard from 2001 to 2005. After his years of service, Chairman Goggles served as a law enforcement officer for the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the City of Thermopolis, and later as a judge for the Wind River Tribal Court. Fellow representatives, please help me welcome Chairman Goggles to the House.
Good morning. Thank you for that introduction, Speaker Summers. I appreciate it. Leader Neiman, Speaker Pro Tem Stith, and members of the Wyoming Legislature. Thank you for allowing this opportunity to come and speak to you on behalf of the Arapaho people. I was born and raised here in Wyoming. I'm the son of a volunteer, who's also a Marine. Was always told that God loves volunteers, and I believe that. My oldest daughter, she's in the Navy right now, and I have an 8-year-old. He has he's aspiring to do the same, but it's kind of hard for me to take because he's my baby. I bring you greetings from the Arapaho people, and it's good to be here. I'm glad I made the trip. I was bad there for a moment. I thought about turning around, but then I wanted to be here with you all, so I braved the storm and asked for good weather, and no sooner I asked, and then the sun came out and the roads cleared up. So that reaffirmed to me I made the right decision. So I thank you for your time, and thank you all for being here. I know you guys have a lot of work, and I appreciate that for sure, because you guys have long days, and I thought I was growing out of the long days, but now I have some long days myself. So, but I just like to reaffirm, the relationship that we have. We have a good council and everything. I commend them all the time because it really comes down to having the right minds in the right place, I believe, because it seems like it's the little steps are where you make the giant leaps, and there's some things that we disagree on, but this is the place to do it, but at the end of the day, or hopefully before the end of the day, we'll come to that right decision where we have that good peace and sound decision. Not for our sake, but for the sake of our people out here in Wyoming and our children and grandchildren. And I think it's great times to be with the governor. He makes me feel good. If I wasn't wearing this today, I also wear a cowboy hat too. I myself, I've raised horses and cows. I still have cows. I embrace the buckaroo culture. That's kind of where my family comes from, and so I got this as a gift from the Moss, the Saddle Boots Attack Mills, Wyoming. They knew I was coming here, and I just happened to stop by at the store, and they said, "Hey, why don't you wear this and show the people who you are and where you come from?" So, that was pretty cool to have them, think of you guys. And I'd like to invite you guys, if you guys are ever in the Wind River area, stop in and visit. There's a lot of good country, and there's other people besides myself who believe in being able to collaborate, because I always say I wouldn't be able to do the things I've done if I didn't collaborate with a lot of agencies, state, federal, county, and whatnot. And it's it it's always helped me, and so I'd like to give a lot of credit to all my mentors and my teachers, and I mentioned Ray Hunt in the Senate. Hopefully I get to meet all you guys and get to know all your names. Ray Hunt was real good at that, and so he was always kind of a hero of mine, and it was good to get to know him. But it's really good to be here. I believe that I'm a good representative of all of the organizations that that I come from. The Marine Corps, the Wyoming Guard, and I'd like to think I've earned. I mean, it just happened to work out that way. I've just always followed a path that was lit ahead of me, and I thank God for that, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be able to see straight. And so with all that being said, I can't take any of the credit. It's all to who's either barked at me or hollered at me and kind of shaped me to be who I am, and I appreciate that. And it's good to be here amongst y'all and share the morning with you. So, but thank you. That's all I have.
And Chairman Goggles, we really appreciate you coming, and come back anytime. Privilege of the floor, Representative Berger,
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, thank you. Privilege of the floor.
please.
I don't know if anybody noticed this, but the boot's here, and it's in the house, and I've been a part of that boot, not playing, but as a fan, and it's a great traveling trophy that goes around between CSU and Wyoming. So welcome to the house, the bronze boot.
Hey! Privilege of the floor, Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Privilege of the floor. I think it's just interesting. We just heard from the chairman of the Arapahoe Business Council. To our knowledge, that is the first time either a business council from either tribe has ever addressed the legislature on the floor. So thank you, and well done, Chairman Goggles.
Yeah. I do believe maybe the other John Winter is in the house, Dr. John Winter. So welcome to the house. He might be able to fix what ails you, but I bet he can't float your teeth as well as the other John Winter can. We're at that order of business of Senate files on first reading. The first Senate file for our consideration is Senate File number 80.
Senate File 80, sponsored by Senator McEwen.
First reading of the bill.
Visitation rights.
Senate File 80 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 144.
Senate File 144, sponsored by Senator Bouchard.
First reading of the bill.
Chloe's Law, Children Gender Change Prohibition.
Senate File 144 is referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 155.
Senate File 155, sponsored by Senator Scott.
First reading of the bill.
Education Teacher Resources.
Senate File 155 is referred to Committee Number 4, Education. Let's see. There he is. We're at that order of business of bills on third reading and final passage. Oh, oops. Reports from standing committees. Privileged Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Got to have some more good young people from County Number 1 in Casper, and they're here as part, I mentioned all the construction and CTE students are here today, and there'll be more come sponsoring a lunch for us as well. But I wanted to introduce, if you gentlemen could stand there with an advanced kind of construction class that we offer in the Trona County School District. Jasper Jardine, stand up. Andrew Hoyt, Evan Fazio, and Victor Moreno. Welcome to the house, gentlemen. Yeah.
Okay, now let's back up to where I should be, which is reports from standing committees.
Senate File 61, sponsored by Management Council. Legislator per diem, an act relating to per diem rates. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 61 engrossed, Legislator per diem, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Swanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. Senate File 94, sponsored by Senator Ellis. Federal Indian Child Welfare Act codification, an act relating to domestic relations. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2 Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 94 engrossed, Federal Indian Child Welfare Act codification, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Walters, Swanitzer. Noes, Representative Stith. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
All right. We're at that order of business of bills on second reading. The first bill for our consideration is Senate File 7.
Senate File 7, sponsored by Senator Baldwin. Definition of opiate antagonist amendment, an act relating to public health and safety.
Senate File 7, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 10.
Senate File 10, sponsored by Labor, Licensed Professional Counselor Compact, an act relating to professions and occupations.
Senate File 10, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 37.
Senate File 37, sponsored by Senator Baldwin. Podiatry, Medical Services, Medicaid, an act relating to Medical Assistance and Services Act.
Senate File 37, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 40.
Senate File 40, sponsored by Senator Case. Federal Political Action Committees, reports, an act relating to campaign practices.
Senate File 40, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 43.
Senate File 43, sponsored by Senator Case, EMS districts, an act relating to improvement and service districts.
We have amendments. Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move first reading amendment to Senate File 43 and ask for your favorable consideration. Second reading, Amendment 1 to Senate File 43 and ask for your favorable consideration. What this amendment does is moves the voting requirement into the general election, so it only can be done during the general election. And I request an aye.
Representative Larson Lloyd for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in the bill, it references the political subdivisions bond election law. That's the reference for the political subdivisions follow when there's an election criteria for things such as the merger to this EMS district or something else. And it allows it to be on the day of a primary election or a general election, and then on the off year as well. This removes that. This bill would remove that and just have it be on the general election cycle. I would request that you oppose this and not adopt it. I think the folks, if they want to impose a bond and on themselves or have a mill, not a bond, I apologize. If they're going to vote on a mill for this EMS district, that they have the ability to do that as prescribed currently in law. There is one part that I'm not quite sure of, but maybe the Breener can help me with this, is on the last portion of the amendment. It goes into the last page and deletes for at least 23 months and then adds new language that says until at least the next general election, but that's the same thing. So if you read that, it says that this, if they want to oppose or remove this this bond or this mill levy, that they have it on the next general election. That's where you see that on line 4, page 8. And then if the proposition is defeated, they can't bring that proposition back again to the electors for at least 23 months. So that would be the next general election. And so I'm not understanding why he replaces, it's the same thing. So maybe you can help me understand that a little bit, but would encourage a no vote.
Representative Hornock for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for this amendment, I don't know about you, but in your counties, there is a pretty good difference between the turnout for general election versus primary or special elections. So the largest turnout generally is the general election. People understand that they need to come out for that general election. So this special district, we're talking about something that is probably limited, very limited to a small amount of people who may or may not, come out for any other election other than the general election. So we're talking about a special district that can impose a tax on certain people, and it may be that they become very unhappy when they realize that they missed the election to impose an additional mill levy on themselves. So I think that it's safe. The safest way to go would be to just keep this within the general election where the most people would turn out to vote. I encourage and I vote on this. Thanks.
Chairman Zwanitzer for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Generally opposed to the amendment, and I don't disagree at all with what the last speaker said. If that special district, in this case an EMS district, is a county-wide district, but you have to understand that these special districts, they can come in all shapes and sizes. And so you don't want them, in many cases, this is a part of a special improvement district, you have to start drawing precincts, right? Because this is a separate ballot question for the people in that special district that's not part of the greater, if it's not countywide. And so then you're creating some issues for our county clerks, depending on when they do this election, right? So if this is a large part of the county, it's not as much of an issue. But if this is a specialized subset of some random part of a rural county, it's just easier to work with your county clerk of that county, have the election at what time works best for them, because depending on the size, you don't want to add that extra stress and pressure onto your county clerks to do an offset election if it doesn't fall cleanly within another precinct. I'd submit to you, we just did precincts when we did redistricting, a year and a half ago. And so it's going to be a controversial issue and difficult until the next time we do redistricting around new special districts. So in a county level, if this was just for the county, I think it'd be no problem. But remember that special districts outside of the one county I think we're talking about, if another area of the state wanted to engage in this, you're really limiting them and impacting their county clerk, and it's not clean or easy. And so that's why I'd resist the amendment.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the bringer of the amendment? Representative Stivar. Oh, Representative Larson Lloyd.
Thank
For
you.
your second
Thank
time.
you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know that there was a comment made that the general elections generally have more people, but I think if you look in this last election cycle, the majority of the primary elections had a greater turnout than did the general election. So I don't know that that always holds true. I think in any election, whether it be whenever it's held, I think that we talk in this body about allowing the individual their rights and their freedoms, but with that also comes responsibility. And so people oftentimes know that there's an election and don't turn out. I think in this section of the statutes, there's a requirement to advertise and make sure that people understand an election's up, and that there's an opportunity and a responsibility to vote, but we can't drag them there by the nose. So it's personal responsibility, and when they go in getting there is important. So again, would ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the amendment. Not too long ago in this county here, we had a special bond election for a fire district. 178 people voted. Nobody knew about it. Everybody got their cards the day after the election in the mail. So on and for this amendment, vote aye.
All those in favor of second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 43 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 43 has failed. Division having been called. All those in favor, please rise. All those opposed, please stand. Thank you. Second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 43 has failed, 27 to 33. And remember, when we call division, I've got to call it before you call division. The next amendment, Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 43 and ask for your favorable consideration. So this was kind of birthed out of the committee. When we were talking about this, it was brought up why 4 mills, what settled on the 4 mill conversation, and no one really had well, this is exactly why we need 4 mills. They kind of threw around this idea or that idea, but the testimony we heard in committee was that 2 mills would cover the need. And so I believe that in some counties, obviously, 2 mills is a lot more than other counties. And so on your smallest counties, 2 mills would be flowing into probably right in the ballpark of $400,000 for your smallest county. But other counties, that could be 6 million. And so that's what you have to understand is that is out there. But across the board, our testimony stated that 2 mills would be sufficient for the need. And so I would ask that we would pass this. Let's limit the mill structure and not place more undue burden on the people than we need to.
Representative Larson Lloyd for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And there's a couple of points I think worth considering. And I think that the conversation yesterday on the floor had expressed some concerns that in a county where you have a lot of industry is going to definitely pay the majority of the mills associated if this were adopted. And I think that that's a fair assumption. We again pointed out that industry has not opposed this. And so in one of those counties, if you're fortunate enough to have that kind of base, 2 mills or even less than 2 mills, because it's not required that it be. It's just, it would be the initial one would be up to 2 mills. If they passed an additional 2 mills, it doesn't have to be a total of 4. It could be 2.3, 2.5. At 2 mills, it could be a half a mill. That would be decided by the board depending on the revenue generated from the mill. But if you live in a county where there isn't industry, where maybe it's largely agriculture, or you have nonprofits or education and government that's your major sources of industry, they're not paying a property tax. And so then 2 mills, as pointed out by the good brainer of the amendment, may fall short of the intent of this. And it's really these districts who are struggling the most that need to have the capacity to generate revenue to provide these services. And so they may, to strip them of the ability to then be able to assess that second mill, I think is counterproductive. The part of this, with the explanation I just heard, that I don't quite understand, and maybe as he concludes, he can help me understand that. But yesterday we pointed out that there's 2 ways to get an EMS district into place. One is through a resolution that's generated in the county, that's brought to the commissioners, validated, and then it goes to a vote. And with the vote of adopting that comes the first 2 mills, and then they can adopt the second 2 mills. Or the second option is this, where the commissioners would create the board, and then they would determine what the mill levy should be, and then take that to the voters to approve. So the voters get to approve on either way this medical district is formed. The voters get to approve the mill. But if it comes through a resolution, they can approve 4 mills. But if it comes through this way, they only can approve 2. And I'm not quite, I don't know why that is. Maybe you can help me understand that. But again, I think we need to be careful not to take particularly in these counties that have expressed have been most vocal about the need to be able to have some way to generate revenue to provide emergency medical services. They don't have industry there that really contributes to their base. And so I would encourage a no vote.
Representative Sherwood for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While I appreciate the intent of the amendment is trying to find that sweet spot where we're not overshooting and then overtaxing, I would just like to share that there is really no one-size-fits-all solution in this concept. The community where I represent has no dead dinosaurs, so we do not have a large oil and gas industry to help us with our, our income for these services, and our 3 largest employers do not pay property tax. So I would, I guess as a juxtaposition, like to suggest that maybe we have a conversation about raising the cap on the mills to 6 or 8. I realize now is not the time for that conversation, but in visiting with my EMS special districts, the cap of 4 right now is not providing what we need in our community to provide these services. So I would be very cautious to go down to just 2. Thank you.
Representative Ottman for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we can see, this is a discussion between differences of opinions, but also differences of location. And I was just wondering if the good representative could explain how the mills will work for county, because the commissioners set that up, and municipalities, just so we understand there. Is it going to affect municipalities? Would they be the plus or minus that are in or out of this mill? Thank you.
Representative Davis for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Serving on multiple boards, I think the question is here, 2 will do it, but 2 extra are available. So being human, 2 may get us to what we need to do. And that should be what we're doing here. But the extra 2 is for the frivolous things, the beyond, the more than what we need to accomplish the task.
Representative Hornock for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a little bit of context to think about in your decision with this amendment. Special hospital districts can assess, throughout the state, special hospital districts can assess themselves a 6 mil levy. So it's the voter gets to decide on 3, and the county commissioners can impose another 3. So it's up to 6. Throughout the state, the special mill levy for fire districts can be 4, or no, I'm sorry, can be 3. So a fire district throughout the state can impose themselves a 3 mil levy for their service. And so we're talking about an EMS district here that can impose themselves a higher mill levy than a fire district. And so the difference between those 2 is that oftentimes I don't get a bill when the fire truck comes to do a service, but I will get a bill when the ambulance comes to do their service. So we're not completely covering the cost of EMS services here. Those services are provided to individuals and they're billed. So most of the time they will get paid for their services, or they can bill for those services. So I don't really understand the need to assess a possible mill levy on an EMS service that's higher than what we assess for the special fire districts. So the 2 mil seems like it's a pretty good place to start for this service and see that it works. I would encourage an aye vote on this amendment. Thanks.
Representative Wiley for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just like to point out that this is a great example of local control. And better yet, the folks get to see it on the ballot before they say yes or no. And since these mill levies and stuff aren't equal across the board, I would ask everybody, please let my friends, families, and neighbors choose this for themselves. They'll see this. A good amendment, maybe I would suggest let's do an elected board. Thank you.
Representative Berger for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this comes from our Chief Administrative Office
So,
officer in Uinta County.
Representative Berger, you cannot read a direct email,
Oh,
direct
sorry.
letter, or a direct
So
story.
the question is, that I have, Mr. Chairman, is, we have a lot of issues on, for EMS and emergency service, especially on the interstate that goes through our county. And, a lot of those people don't pay our county taxes. And, so we're just asking, how do we solve this issue? How do we do that? How do we get there? So is it raising our taxes? Is it asking more from those people using that interstate? Because we provide a lot of service there. And we're just wondering how to solve this issue. Thanks.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Provenza for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess in trying to make a decision about how many mills, and maybe this has been answered already, but did any EMS districts in committee come and say what the amount of uncompensated care was? I know our hospitals have $120 million in uncompensated care every year, and I would imagine those numbers are at least the ratio of uncompensated ambulance rides is pretty high as well. And that's why your ambulance rides are so expensive anyway, because you have to pay for the uncompensated ambulance rides. So I'm wondering if there are any figures to demonstrate how often these folks aren't getting paid for those services.
Representative Stith for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I don't know about other counties, but in my county, the ambulance services run in the red a little over $1 million a year. So right now, they bill the patients, the customers, and the insurance companies, but they have a lot of dry runs and uncompensated care. And so right now in our county, in my county, it's they're running something over $1 million in the red. Now for my county, 2 mills would be plenty because 2 mills would raise $6 million. But there are counties where 2 mills wouldn't be that far. So I think this amendment doesn't quite, it has the right sentiments, but not quite tailored carefully enough to, I think, to address the whole state. So on and against the amendment. Thank you.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time? Representative Larson Lloyd for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try and answer the good representative from my county that asked how this is implemented. And remember that the commissioners have the ability to determine what the district is geographically. And so everyone within that district would be impacted with the mill that's associated. So it would be towns as well as the county and industry. So perhaps in your district, it would be, it could be that town furthest to Togety Pass, but yet some of those companies that produce oil in that area as well as the constituents where you live. So it's everyone within the geographic confines of that district. I think that we really have to be careful too when we say 2 mills is fine, but if we give them an additional 2 mills, they're just going to be off to the fair, spending it all on cotton candy and whatever else. I just don't think you can say that the second 2 meals is going to be frivolous. You don't know that. To make those kind of assumptions, I think, flies a little bit in the face of the fiduciary responsibilities that these county individuals have. And I just don't think that that's a fair assessment of what our county officials do. I think there's a question of getting reimbursed for how you bill for services. If the volunteer fire folks come, where maybe you don't have volunteers. In my county, it's all volunteers. If they come, there's not if they come to address an emergency in my town, there's not a bill that's sent. I think that ambulance services have the opportunity to bill. They can probably bill insurance, they can bill, that's why we have the EMS upper payment limit again, that we talked about. But with those in place, we still know that their funding is insufficient. I think 2%, somebody said, one of the previous speakers says 2% is a great place to start. Couldn't agree more. That's why we start at 2%. That's why that's the base. And then and it may not even need to be 2%. In the good representative that serves with me on appropriations mentioned in his county, the amount that 2% would generate around 6 million. They may only need 1%. They could levy up to 2%, but they may only need 1%. That's what the board and the electorate decide, and they assess that on an annual basis. But if you live in one of those counties, maybe where the springs are hot, or maybe where the horns are big, or my county, it may not be enough. And the voters, the people that we represent should have the right to make that decision. And so I'd encourage a no vote.
Anybody else for their second time? Representative Davis, are you there for your second time? Representative Berger for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just again, I just keep thinking about this and keep thinking about what's going on in UNT County. And we survive in UNT County due to our volunteers. They're amazing. But this solution is kind of on a downhill slide in our county. And we need solutions. And where they're at, I don't know, but I am for the 4 mills. We need to start thinking about solutions, and money is one of them. The funding is a lot. And we need to be able to ask our people how we want to solve this issue. Thanks.
Anybody else for their second time before the bringer of the amendment? Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you guys for the conversation. Obviously, that's why we bring these amendments, to have these discussions and have the conversation. So really what we're coming down to, the conversation needs to be, what's the right mill and how do we want to make this work? So to answer the question that came forward, when we have a petition brought forward to the commissioners to establish one of these districts, why 4 mil potential for them with 2 the other way? Well, I just want you to listen to that very concept. Petition brought by constituents. They're actually saying, hey, guys, we got a problem. We need to fix this problem. We're gonna band together as the community to fix our problem. I even venture to say we already have a solution, you guys, in statutes that's not being used. So we're gonna put a second solution in, because it takes the people away from actually having to do the work to make the reality out of the solution. Keep that in mind. But we have a solution in place that the petition can come forward, that if they truly do need 4 mills in a county of that nature, sure, let them have that, because they're actually putting the sweat equity into making reality out of that. This is a situation where an elected board of commissioners, in my county that I live, that's 3 individuals. 3 individuals can now make a decision to move forward with putting a tax on a ballot. Now, on any ballot, because we didn't put the prior amendment in that would hold it to a certain election. Now it can be on any election, and now the decision's being made. And so I think it's important to understand, you can go through, go and talk to your local government about all the mill options that are out there. There's a lot of mills. You consider that there's a lot of ways that we're taxing our property in the state of Wyoming. And so the opportunity is there for the petition to make reality out of this. And if these counties truly need that, I believe that that's an area they can go. But I think that there's a point where we don't want to make taxing easy. And the moment we make it where it's kind of the sweat-free tax option, where if we can get this thrown on and you know what, maybe we need a little more and throw that on. Well, you guys, I mean, maybe we should throw another amendment on for 75 mills. I don't know. I mean, where do we want to stop? We got to have a question of do we want to make taxation something that's easy, even if it goes on ballot initiatives? So on and for the amendment, let's cap this at 2, and if they need more than that, they can do the petition avenue.
All those in favor of second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 43 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 43 has failed. Division being called. All those in favor, please rise. Okay, thank you. All those opposed, please rise. Stand still. All right. All right, thank you. Second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 43 has failed, 24 to 36. Senate File 43, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. You know, I don't know if anybody's doing a privilege for those, but I do know that I just wanted to recognize up in the balcony up there, Rob Hill. I want to recognize Rob Hill and all the work that Rob does for CTE around the state of Wyoming and his crew there with him. They do an awesome job advocating for career technical education. Give them a round of applause. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 55.
Senate File 55, sponsored by Senator Nethercott. Chancery Court Vacancies, Extension Amendment, an act relating to courts.
Senate File 55, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 69.
Senate File 69, sponsored by Senator Nethercott. Electronic Records Retention, an act relating to courts.
Senate File 69, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 71.
Senate File 71, sponsored by Appropriations, State Loan and Bond Programs, an act relating to state public purpose investments.
Senate File 71, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 88.
Senate File 88, sponsored by Travel, Hunting Licenses, Weighted Bonus Point System, an act relating to game and fish.
We have amendments. Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 88 and ask for your favorable consideration.
Mr. Speaker.
I did.
Just did.
All right, Chairman Newsom.
So I would question the germaneness of this particular amendment and would like a Rules Committee.
All right, Rules Committee to the front. So just kind of to let everybody know what happened, we debated the issue. We believe the amendment is in fact within the title of the bill. We found a technical correction that needs to be done in the amendment. So that amendment will kind of be laid back because it cites the wrong statute. So with that, I think that we're going to have a privilege of the floor, Chairman Harshman, to clean up my lack of doing a good job.
No, Mr. Speaker, you did wonderful. Appreciate the opportunity. Privilege of the floor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if you want to stand up, let your love flow here and just stand up and listen for a minute on this. We have an incredible group of adults and kids here from all across Wyoming have braved winter roads to come down here to Cheyenne and watch us work. And as you'll know, today there's a lunch sponsored by all of our CTE groups around the state. And then a little after lunch starts, our governor will come down to the down there in our gathering room down there in the Capitol Extension, and he's going to make a proclamation today that it's Career Technical Education Month in the state of Wyoming. So hopefully you can all attend that. So we have folks from all around the state here today, and so first, just the Wyoming Association of Career and Technical Education instructor. The president is Joseph Martinez, and the president-elect is Megan Garnhart. Where are you guys at? Wave to us up there. Welcome them to the House. And then we have our FFA kids, and Stacy Brower, she's our state advisor, and state officers are from Albany, Laramie, Fremont, Johnson, and Goshen. Can all our FFA folks stand up? Kids, adults, thank you. Welcome to the House. And then our FBLA, we have from Cheyenne, a member, Alexis Dockin. Where are you at? Alexis, she's over here? Yes, and South Gallery. And then for the FCCLA, we have state officer from Glen Rock, CJ Toner. CJ, where are you at? Welcome to the House. And folks, we have several Skills USA folks here today, and it's a partnership of students, teachers, and industry working together to ensure that our state and our country has a skilled workforce well into the future. So these programs, events, competitions all support career technical education. The Skills USA is 400,000 members across our country, and in Wyoming, our membership, we're at 900 now and growing as we enter this school year. So the state officer team is present today. Kylie Lamb of Gillette College, Nathan Van Natter from Guernsey Sunrise High School, Christy Thomas from Pathways Innovation Center in Casper, Liberty Whitebird also from Guernsey, and they are accompanied by many advisors, esteemed alumni, and the state director of Wyoming Skills USA. Thank you for all you do, and welcome to the House.
Welcome to the House. They're really great organizations, and I think children that belong to these are going to be successful adults. And folks that are in career technical education do wonderful things in our community. And I so appreciate all the work they do and all the education they provide our children. And you know, we found out that in fact that was the correct site on that amendment. And so we're just going to go ahead and remove that. We're going to remove that amendment if we can find Representative Harrelson. If not, I'll just, there he is. Next one. Okay. I'll go with you, Representative Henderson. We'll come back to that one later.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second read amendment to second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 88 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, when we talked about this on committee of the whole,
I mentioned that when we make changes in policy, particularly significant changes like this, it's worth considering a way to bridge that for circumstances that we cannot know of or predict. And so we have this just cause provision in some other areas, and that's what gave me the idea for your consideration. And what this does is it adds a provision on page 1 for authorizing the issuance of a license based on a just cause waiver. And then if you turn to page 7, down there at the end of the paragraph, after the word section on page 7, line 21, it inserts the sentence, "The commission may make provisions for a resident or non-resident to receive a license based upon a just cause waiver for special circumstances to be determined by the commission. Any just cause waiver approved by the commission shall be contingent upon compliance with conditions specified by the commission and receipt of full payment of any applicable fees." And so I bring this for your consideration, hopefully favorable, to recognize that there are a lot of things that we don't know about right now in terms of the good work, bridging the good work that's been done, the good discussion by the task force, the good debate we had on this bill yesterday. And so I would just ask for your favorable consideration and stand by for any questions.
Representative Western for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise against this amendment, and I ask for a no vote, simply just because of this. There's an element of redundancy here. Right now, the commission and the department already has the ability to do this, and they do it. It's a pretty thorough process. You can't just call in and say, "Oh, I broke my leg, give me another tag next year." When this does happen, it's a thorough verification process. They'll say, "Okay, well, let's get on the phone with we need a note from your orthopedic surgeon showing that you actually broke your femur that rendered you unable to perform this hunt," and not like a toe stub or something along those lines. So that's the process that we have now. It does get used with actually more regularity than you would think. So it just adds an element of redundancy that I don't think is truly necessary. So thank you. Please vote no.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the sponsor? Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So what I was thinking about was something a little more serious than that. I was thinking about perhaps a young person who perhaps found out they had cancer, and I recognize we have situations now that are addressed by our good commission and commissioners. But as I said, this is related to a very significant change in a very significant policy related to our hunting sector and our game industry here in terms of, it affects a lot of things. And so I think it's worth considering a mechanism to consider as we change this policy. If no further question, I call for the question.
All those in favor of second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 88 signify by saying aye. All those opposed? No. Amendment has failed. I think we did get a corrected copy, so I think if Representative Haraldson is here, we'll go back to second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 88. Representative Haraldson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, sorry, real quick question. Do I need to move that? It's already been moved, so we're good, correct?
Move it again, and then we'll have it for sure.
Okay, sounds good. At this point in time, I move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 88 and ask for your favorable consideration. So what this is it's a conversation that we need to have. These preference points or weighted bonus points or whatever we decide at the end of this conversation, you guys, they're probably one of the most valuable thing in the state of Wyoming. If you've got gold in your safe at home, it's not as valuable as this, I promise that. Because what we have is the opportunity for an experience that is a once-in-a-lifetime experience in the state of Wyoming. So you have an individual that moves here and they start applying for these bonus points, and they apply for these bonus points for, say, 25 years. And the problem is it outruns their age. They get to the point where they can't actually use this opportunity. This would give the opportunity for that individual, say a grandfather or someone of that, or grandmother, someone in that older age group that cannot have the opportunity to use those preference points that they accrued through their lifetime, it gives them the opportunity to gift them to an immediate family member. And so that's what this amendment does. And the issue that we had, what we had to kind of postpone it for, was in 40-23-102A XXIV, it says, immediate family member means a spouse, child, sibling, parent, grandparent, grandchild, step parent, stepchild, step siblings, or adopted relationship included in this paragraph. And so it is an opportunity for family members to receive these weighted bonus points or these preference points, and gives the family the opportunity to be a part of this, the harvesting of this animal. And so that way, someone that started applying back when everyone was like, oh, you know, when I was a kid, it was 12 points. If you had 12, you were drawn a ram tag. Well, now 12 points, we laugh at. I mean, there's people in this room that if they had 12 points, they'd be planning their fall right now, not listening to this bill, because they'd be going on their hunt. Well, now we're looking at more like 25 points. Well, when this entire slug of people hit that realm, we lose that window. There are people that will wait the rest of their life to try get this. So this is giving us an opportunity for us to build almost a legacy of sorts, where I could start applying for my son. Because the reality is, I will never be able to hunt a bighorn in this state at the current rate of application and draw. So it'd be an opportunity where I could start applying for preference points that my son could someday benefit from, or my grandson could benefit from. Unless we can find a way to massively increase our numbers, which isn't probably going to happen, massively decrease the people applying, which we know won't happen, then we have to give some opportunity. So I believe this is an opportunity for people to be able to use that preference point or weighted bonus point that they've been accruing to be able to offer the opportunity for an immediate family member to take their place if they age out of the system. So with that, I am on and for the amendment and believe that this would be an opportunity to address an issue that we have in this area.
Representative Western for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I hate to be Mr. No over here, but I have to ask for a no vote, and I want to support this. I really do. I think the intent is great, but we have to think about the unintended consequences. That's this. If we pass this, it will allow for what's called point stacking, meaning I've waited in line 20, 21, 22 years, etc., and I think I've got my draw odds pretty well calculated. All of a sudden, a bunch of people come into that applicant pool who only had 5, 10 points because they got their sibling, their child, or whoever to get those, give their points to. All of a sudden, another applicant enters that pool who has as many points, which reduces my odds. It would be one thing if this was maybe only 3 or 4 cases a year where this might happen, but unfortunately it's not. If you look at all the people out there that do have points, it's tens of thousands of people. So when you enter a draw to go after one of these coveted tags, when you think you've got pretty solid odds, and all of a sudden another 20 to 30 to 40 people enter that applicant pool, your draws just went from pretty high to pretty low. When you thought you had 25 points and you're at the top of the heap or near it, someone comes in with 30, 40, 50 points, and all of a sudden your odds went from high to near zero. So again, I appreciate it. I think there's good intent behind it, but the unintended consequences here can really hurt those folks who are waiting in line like the rest of us and just trying to draw this tag. So please vote no. Thank you.
Representative Berger for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too really like this amendment brought by the good bringer. But I also think about what we also have out there are point chasers by non-residents. I like the idea of keeping those tags within the family, how to transfer those points. But point chasers, they're non-residents and they chase points and they look for families or for individuals who have a lot of points, and those non-residents will find those people and they're not in the family unit, and they will buy those tags and put in as a party and buy all those tags, or buy everybody's tags so that that point person, they take the highest point. And so I'm kind of concerned about point chasers. I don't think they can point chase as long as it's just, you can't group. I guess my question is, you can't enter as a group, right? So if we're not entering as a group and having the point chasers, then I think I'm for this, because I want to keep those tags within the family or those points. I think it's a good idea. Thanks.
Chairman Newsom for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against this amendment, I think that the administration of this sort of thing would be a nightmare. Can I transfer my points once, and then if the person I transferred them to didn't draw, do I get those back? Do they have to stay with the person? You know, the logistics of allowing these points to be transferred, which has never been done, seems to be something of a challenge to the agency, as well as a kind of a nightmare to how does this all work? Then instead of 20 points, do I need 80 or 100 points? Do I get my dads, my sisters, my brothers, my uncles, my step daughters? Where does this end? I think that's the question. So on and against this particular amendment. Thank you.
Representative Larson Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so the question I have to the bringing of the bill, so in my instance, if I look at that definition of family, I have 6 children, I have 19 grandchildren, and they're all getting to that age now to where they can hunt. So we could get this plan, right? And they could all accumulate points, and we could specify who we're going to donate those points to. And so, you know, I guess that's my question. So depending on the size of your family, and then, you know, you can pick on your brothers and sisters. I think similar to what the chairman of TRW was pointing out to, it seems like you could really, my good doctor here, who has more grandkids than I do who are this age, then they could even collaborate even more. So if I understand that right.
Representative Provenza for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just have a question of if the mechanism is in place in terms of being able to identify who is family. Would it need to be verified by the agency? Yeah, just questions about kind of the agency and fiscal impact that might come with this.
Representative Craigo for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a question for the good bringer of the amendment. What happens if the person dies, right? So let's say John Q. Public has 20 points saved up for one of these licenses. Is it transferable by the will? What if they don't have a will? Sorry to think like a lawyer, but I think that's kind of where we are. So does it go to probate? Do the courts get to decide who gets the points? I mean, I just see a lot of issues with that, especially because there's no limitation on it being a gift during life versus a gift after life. There's just a lot of issues, I think, from a legal perspective, where it's just going to cause a lot of problems for the department. But on and against.
Anybody else for their first time? Chairman Burkhart for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, real world, I have a friend here in Cheyenne, they have 14 children. And that, so if all of them in the family put in, that's 16 applications in a year. The next year they transfer them to one individual. Now they have 32 points, which is more than anyone else in the state. Means they're guaranteed a license every year. That family, they can just move it around the family and they're guaranteed that license. So on and against the amendment, I think there's just too much strangeness in it.
It's a bit of a judgment. Representative Byron, thank you.
First for a second.
Anybody else for their first time? That's the second time I've spaced out Byron. Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the bringer of the amendment? Representative Haroldson for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'm glad I get to talk about my strange amendment here and have a conversation. So first of all, the good news is if this bill passes, for all the people who are so concerned about, it won't matter how many points you have anymore. It's just that all can be a multiplier. So the reality and what we heard in testimony is the biggest loss of this is you can't actually plan your hunt anymore because you don't actually have a guarantee of a draw, because it's going to be in a random drawing with a multiplier. And then yesterday was a quad plier. I'm not sure. We got something else in there now too. So if this passes, it's not going to be a deal where you can actually plan that hunt on the number of years anymore that I have. I got 25 points. I'm pretty much in the pool. I'm going to get a tag. We don't know that anymore because the reality is with the weighted bonus point system, the 12-year-old that has a single point and has a single draw odd has the ability to draw that tag. That's the reality. Now, is that probable? No. But we all know that if probable was everything, no one would ever go to Vegas. Sorry, the place that they like to gamble. And so what this is this is not based on that. The other thing you have to understand is, so we said, what happens if there's that person that gets 90 points? That's 90 points out of the system. That's a really good thing. Because what our problem with our system is too many points to not enough tags. So in the reality is we're going to start eliminating our points out of our system, which is what needs to happen. We've got too many points by too many individuals, and so this will actually start dwindling that point number. And so I think that at this point, we need to understand this would limit that ability for those points to kind of be out of hand. Is so that individual that has 90 and they get drawn, that's 90 points that get sucked out of the system, because once you draw, those points disappear. So I believe this is an opportunity to address a flaw, to fix a situation where those people that have for years and years and years been applying, and it's like, man, this is going to happen. We had a testimony from an individual from my district that came and said, hey, you know what? I'm at a point where if we go to this weighted system, I lose the opportunity for me to potentially ever be able to hunt a ram, because I'm right on the bubble. I'm right in that area where I'm gonna have an issue anyways with my health. And now that if it's not a for sure, now it's into this drawing, I might get lucky and draw, but I usually am never lucky with the Fish and Wildlife Service in the state of Wyoming, so I usually never get to make that draw. So this would be an opportunity where he could not lose those, and he could give those to the next generation, give those to his kids or his grandkids, and keep it in the family. On and for the amendment. With that, I call for the question.
All those in favor of second reading amendment number 1, the corrected copy to Senate File 88, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 88 has failed. Next amendment is second reading amendment number 3, Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 88 and ask for your favorable consideration. And what this does is, as you know, there's a once-in-a-lifetime factor that goes with this. And this just simply brings in that says if you're unsuccessful, you would be allowed to draw or attempt to draw a second time. You just go back into the draw. But only if you're unsuccessful. If you're successful, it remains a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So with that, I would ask for your favorable consideration.
Chairman Newsom.
Thank you. I'm opposed to this particular amendment. I don't know anywhere else that the draw of a license is a guarantee of taking an animal. That's up to you. That's up to the hunting. So I think this opens a door. If I don't get my elk, do I get to retry? If I don't get some other license that is highly desirable, do I get a retry? I think that this sets a policy that we may not want to go down that slope. I think it's problematic if we start saying to people, the draw of a license is a guarantee of taking an animal. I think that's a slippery slope.
Representative Banks for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this amendment. I think it's a fantastic idea. The ability to draw one of these sheep is very rare. And so if you go on this hunt, you're unsuccessful, being able to say, okay, I get to go back in and get another try, I think is something that would make this bill maybe get my support. But I think it's a fantastic amendment. Encourage your aye vote.
Chairman Brown for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I kind of like this, and I'm thinking that we could probably morph this into something with the lottery statutes as well.
Chairman Brown, I don't know about that. Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the Game and Fish, our Fish and Wildlife Service in the state of Wyoming, they do not give the guarantee of a harvest, they give an opportunity. And so fundamentally, we cannot pass this, because if we open it up, then we can't close the door. The other issue with this is, well, I didn't see that book ram. I'm going for my Grand Slam, didn't see the book ram. I'm going to just wait. I'm going to pass. We're all opening the opportunity for almost a potential nefarious option here. And so the Fish and Wildlife Service in the state of Wyoming, we can never make it to where it has to guarantee an outcome. Because the moment we do, that it has to guarantee an outcome, then at that point, we're liable for so much more than that. We are just saying, we're giving you the opportunity. You have the opportunity to go into that range, to go up to that 11,000 foot elevation level and go up in the rock slides and hunt this species of animal. Now, it stinks that you got a year that the temperatures were wrong and it just didn't work out. That's life. I've drawn coveted tags and had miserable years, and anyone else in this room who's a hunter has been in the same boat. But the moment we open the door to say that this agency is guaranteeing you a harvest, no, we're guaranteeing you the opportunity for a harvest. And so whenever we passed that bill as a body last year that said this is a once in a lifetime, we didn't say it was a once in a lifetime harvest, it was a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Representative Pendergraft for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against the amendment, kind of echo the words of the last speaker. What this tag does is give you an opportunity to go harvest. Maybe I can't shoot. Maybe I get up there and I get so excited that I just pull a shot. So I get to come back again next time and do it, and I get to keep coming back, preventing other people from having that opportunity until I'm able to complete this shot. I don't think so. Against.
Chairman Eklund for your first time.
Well, I'm not sure whether I'm for it or against it. I do think the mentality of a hunter is that they would finish the hunt, but what about somebody who really wants the experience over and over and over again? That would be the bad news. They'd be drawing and not shooting anything. They'd be going up for the rest of the experience and not finishing the hunt. The way this could work to the advantage of Game and Fish, it would leave more game up there to hunt for the next draw.
Representative Yin for the first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'm envisioning a situation where I don't want any of these bears or goats or moose or sheep to be killed. And so I want to pull a tag, because if I pull a tag, I can apply for another tag with this amendment right afterwards when I purposely don't harvest any animals. So maybe for those folks, this is a good amendment.
Anybody else? Representative Western for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of this amendment, and I thought there was some comments, about, it's a guarantee, basically guaranteed to harvest, and I would push back a little bit because of this. That feeling when I didn't fill my elk tag or I didn't fill my deer tag, oh man, it burns me up. But I get to come back next year and go after that buck or go after that bull. With this ram tag, that's it. I have not yet harvested, or I've not been awarded a ram tag. I've been accumulating points, but I cannot imagine the dread in my stomach, the sheer just agony of knowing that that season has come and gone. I didn't harvest that tag. What this amendment basically does is say to those folks, hey, we'll give you another bite at the apple of at least being able to draw. I think the gentleman from County 8 made a valid point. We can't rule that type of scenario out entirely. It is fair, but that's what this amendment is doing, is those folks who put on hundreds of miles, who slept in sub-zero temperatures, rain, snow, all that stuff, chasing that ram, and just by just sheer bad luck, didn't quite get a responsible, safe shot at that ram. We're telling those folks through this amendment, hey, we'll give you at least a chance to take another crack at it and get that thing that you've dreamt about for decades. So on and for. Thank you.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Angelos for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against, I used to hunt and fish with my dad. And one thing he used to say when we didn't harvest anything or catch anything was, that's why it's called fishing and hunting and not catching. So on and against.
Anybody else for their first time? Representative Slagle for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On and against this amendment, I feel that this is a deal. The legislature decided I believe it was last session, this is once an opportunity deal. And now we're trying to change that. I mean, yeah, if you didn't harvest, you've had your opportunity. And so on and against this amendment. Thank you.
Representative Clouston for your first time.
On against the amendment, the Wildlife Task Force spent 18 months studying this issue. They brought in Game and Fish, they brought in statisticians, they looked at every scenario, and they gave us their best ideas from a year and a half of work. And here we are trying to change it. I think we need to respect the work that's done and all the science and statistics that were used. So against the amendment, on for the bill.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the bringer of the amendment? Representative Pendergraft, Representative Banks first for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I heard some references earlier, and I understand. I've hunted and fished all my life. When you don't get something, yeah, it sucks. But pardon me, it's not as what it could have been. And but you always have the opportunity with every other species to try again. This, you don't get that opportunity. You get one chance. So opening the door just a little bit to say you get a chance to harvest this, one of the biggest trophies this state has to offer, that's something I think that we should take into consideration for these people who put time, money, effort into it, because every other species we give you another chance. So I think we should open that up to this species as well. So on and for this amendment.
Representative Pendergraft for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Still opposed to this. My grandfather was the head of the Wyoming Game and Fish Department, 1946, 1947. He continued until about 1968 when he was forced to retire because of a stroke. But he began to teach me as a very young man about the ethics of hunting. Preparation is required in order for any successful hunt. And I would point out that if you happen to not be successful on a moose hunt, you may never get another chance either. But I foresee a problem where you have a number of people who just really didn't do the preparation that it took and went up there and failed. So that's okay. I'll get another chance until I just really get around to getting it, and effectively clogging up the system. I do not like this amendment and urge a no vote.
Anybody else for their second time before the bringer of the amendment? Representative Walters for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to address the comment that this is a guaranteeing of successfully harvesting, and it is not a guarantee of that. This simply, after you are unsuccessful, you would have to wait the 5 years that you're already required to. Then you would be starting over with 0 points and going back into the draw. So if it took you 30 years the first time, it might take you another 30 years and you may just back out at some point. But it gives you the opportunity to try and draw this again. And I'd like to remind folks, you know, it may not be your own preparation. There's often times, and it happened just a couple years ago, when the mountains over towards the big university caught on fire shortly after the season started, burned 175,000 acres, changed the habitat completely, moved animals out of the area, and yet anyone that had drawn a moose permit in that area that was not successful that year is no longer eligible to try, and it was no fault of their own. They were pushed out due to evacuation orders, and out of hunting, the hunters were pushed out of hunt areas due to evacuation orders. The animals, some of the animals moved out of state trying to avoid the fire and whatnot. So this simply gives that hunter an opportunity to go back into the draw if they're unsuccessful for these once-in-a-lifetime type species. And remember, this is the once-in-a-lifetimes. This isn't the antelope and the elk that you go back next year. This is the once-in-a-lifetime species, and they start over with 0 points after that 5 years, and they start building them up, and they start trying, hoping their luck is successful. So I encourage an aye vote for this. I think it's good for the wildlife population. I think it's good for the hunting populace, and appreciate your support. Thank you.
All those in favor of second reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 88 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Second reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 88 has failed. Senate File 88, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 91.
Senate File 91, sponsored by Senator Nethercott, creation of tenancy by entirety, an act relating to property, conveyances, and security transactions.
Senate File 91, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 139.
Senate File 139, sponsored by Senator Kolb, unlawful use of charge card or debit card, an act relating to crimes and offenses.
Senate File 139, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 173.
Senate File 173, sponsored by Senator Driscoll, financial institutions, similar names, an act relating to banks, banking, and finance.
Senate File 173, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House stand in recess until 2 p.m.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We stand in recess until 2 p.m. Committee announcements. Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4 will meet at 1 o'clock. We're going to go down and visit with the CTE kids, and also there's a fentanyl thing going on today if you want to learn about fentanyl. So we're going to get a little time to learn something and also go visit. So 1 o'clock, so Senate File 98. Thank you.
Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your House appropriations will meet in 5-10 minutes to hear Senate Files 157, 148, and 97. And also your Joint Conference Committee number 1 on House Bill 1 will meet tomorrow at 9 a.m. We'll basically do a walkthrough of the draft agreement.
Chairman Olson.
Thank you. Your House Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions will meet in about 10-15 minutes in E005 to hear 2 Senate files, Senate File 75, Decentralized Autonomous Organization Amendments, and Senate File 76, Wyoming Digital Asset Registration Act.
All right, now we stand in recess until 2 p.m.